Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Grind Podcast. I have...
Stevenmichaelmartin.
And who is Steven?
Who is Steven? Oh, it's a loaded question. On the surface, drummer, actor, YouTuber, content creator, model, occasionally podcaster.
Model what?
Model clothing.
Okay.
Mostly. Yeah. That's been more on the back burner. When I first went independent 9 years ago and broke off from my representation and booking and management, I got into modeling for a couple fashion companies, but I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. I would get booked for a shoot, they would be like, thank you very much. I would get booked for another shoot, they'd be like, thank you very much. But with modeling, I didn't really feel like I was building anything or like expanding on my branding or any of that. So I do have a sponsorship with a clothing company, Hellraiser, and I basically just wear their merchandise in all my YouTube videos and my Instagram posts and my Facebook posts and all of that. But right now, that's the only kind of modeling I do is for the street brand. And that's that.
So you said drummer?
Yeah.
Model? Video creator, basically, right? Mm-hmm. How did that all come about?
Drumming, I started... Geez, how long has it been? About 24 years ago? So my first goal, when I was very, 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 very young, I wanted to be a professional drummer. And that has stayed consistent for over 2 decades.
The drumming was your first goal?
Drumming was the first goal. And when I was...
Wait.
Okay,
back up. So drumming, what is it about drumming? What did you see your parents? Did you see it on TV? What?
The earliest roots, I saw my brother doing it. I had an older brother who was a drummer and looked up to him, admired him, respected him a lot, and had that very childlike, I want to be like him. I want to do that. Beyond that, I was one of those kids who grew up in the MTV era. So didn't watch cartoons, didn't watch reality shows if those existed during the early 2000s. My big thing was watching MTV. I would sit on the couch, watch music videos, watch rock stars, watch rappers, anyone on the screen, and I just sort of absorbed all of it and was like, I want to do something with music, and drumming came most naturally to me.
Is Travis Barker your biggest inspiration?
He's one of them. I read his book, Can I Say? And did you know
Isn't that what he has tatted in his chest?
That's one of his many full body tats.
Yeah.
And do you know he survived a plane crash?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
But his DJ friend did not.
Yes. So I read about him surviving a plane crash when I was on tour with a country artist and I was on the plane. And that was single-handedly one of the most nerve-wracking things I had ever done. Didn't really expect to do it. I was just reading a book on a plane, and then it suddenly got to that whole part, and I'm just like, okay, I'm ready to land.
Sounds
now.
Ironic and scary at the same time.
Yeah, it was both ironic and scary.
Yeah. So, did your brother teach you the drums, or you just learn as...
No, my brother, he bullied me, actually, because he was much better and much older than me, much more experienced as a drummer. So I was trying to pick it up, and I took very early drum lessons. I think by the time I was 7, I was taking drum lessons once a week. But my brother, I think without really knowing it, toughened me up a lot, because there was always someone much better directly in front of me doing all the things that I couldn't do. Which kind of added to my very competitive nature as I got much older and I started to progress and advance a lot more as a drummer. But yeah, in an ideal world, you would think an older brother teaches his younger brother.
Not really.
That would happen for us. No.
The sibling dynamics are very complicated and different with every family, I would say. So would you say you come from a family of musicians and
Yeah.
stuff?
Mom was a music teacher for, I want to say, over 30 years, maybe close to 40 years. So she plays saxophone, piano, kind of guitar, flute, clarinet. Brother obviously took drums. He also moved on to playing guitar and singing and playing bass. That's it, I think. So I guess half my family. Mom and brother both did it. My sister was more of like a dancer, an actress, and my dad like often brought up he had no creative or artistic talents. Yeah. Which was really interesting being so young and like always talking to him about all these drummers and like these different artists and the things they were doing and all these things that I found so interesting. And like he would kind of always like stare at me like I was speaking Arabic, you know. So what I thought was a studio drummer for a movie soundtrack in LA. And I thought, oh, I can do that. You know, I've been a studio musician for as long as I can remember. I've done soundtracks. So I went down to LA thinking he needed a drummer for his soundtrack. Next thing I knew, I was at a director's house and I was talking to the producer outside and they basically said like, yeah, we're gonna bring you into the studio to do a cold read of the script. And I'm thinking, what? A reading for, but I didn't want them to think that I didn't know what was going on, so I'm very, yeah, okay, that sounds great, let's do it. And next thing I know, I'm in his studio, I have a script, and we're doing an audition there on the spot, and all I can think is, I've never done an audition for a film before,
Wait, how did that happen, that mix-up? You thought you were going in for a soundtrack, and he wanted you to act in it.
Yeah.
In the film.
So, turns out, he was casting for characters in his film, and he needed an actor to portray a drummer. So when I'm reading this script, I immediately thought, none of this is acting for me. All of them were like music scenarios with different bands and musicians that I thought, like, I've lived all of this. So it was very, I guess, in character for me. And I did the audition with them. They were like, okay, that's great, we'll let you know. And I took off.
Yeah.
And I got in my car thinking, what was that? Now what? You know, it was still...
But did you feel confident?
I felt confident.
Okay.
I felt like if I needed to portray any character in a film, being a drummer would probably be most easy for me.
Right.
And so I figured, well, I'm in LA. What do I do now? You know, there's not really any reason to rush home, right? So I went to the Hollywood sign and started to make the hike all the way up those trails. And as I was going up there, I got a text from the producer and he said, hey, we'd like to offer you the role of this drummer in this film. And I was just like, great. He said, also, we do need a studio drummer for the soundtrack of this film if you're interested in that. I was like, yeah, I can do that too. So technically, I did end up getting the thing I was originally hoping to get hired for, but I also accidentally became an actor and immediately thought, okay, this is great. I have a role in an LA film. Now I have to figure out how to act really fast. Right. So, that was that.
Did you succeed?
Yeah.
Is this in like a big
so the
Hollywood movie?
The film we did was called Brides of Jesus. And from what I didn't really know how any of this worked in the beginning. This was like my first time being on. I had acted before, but it was nothing like this. You know, nothing in LA. I had done a million music videos, so I was more than comfortable in front of camera. I was on the world's worst reality show, which I never tell people what the title of it was because that was easily the most embarrassing moment in my career that I did not have any choice in. So at this point, like...
reality TV show?
Yeah. At this point, I had been in front of cameras. I had an idea of, like, basic things. Continuity, being animated, doing work on my voice, all of these things. But this was like new ground for me because I hadn't actually been part of like a project in LA like this. So we did the film. I was under the impression from the beginning it was going to be a full feature. From what I gathered, I think they wanted to basically shoot a short film to generate interest from investors to turn it into a full feature. And it hasn't gotten turned into a full feature. But what happened was...
Is this current work?
That was 2020.
Wow.
And then from then I did, I think, like 8 or 9 more films since then. My most recent full feature I did in LA, we finished in the end of May. Mm-hmm. So I basically like just got home a couple months ago from then. But yeah, so that was the very beginning of getting my foot in the door. What I didn't realize at the time was the person who was directing that film had like an extensive background in film, like working with Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures. He had this like large body of work. I didn't know about that. So when he and I talked, it was more like we were just friends. And then we ended up starting a friendship after that project, and then continued to stay friends across these past 4 years. He's still my friend today. I'm going down to see him for Thanksgiving.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Is it easy for you to make friends in Hollywood or in LA, or how do you feel about LA?
Okay. From my experience, see, I'm in an unusual boat because I live close to the capital. So LA is 6.5 hours from me.
So you live in Sacramento?
Yeah. But I go down to LA, I do a project, and then I come home. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really living in that scene down there. The interesting thing I've learned is like from my real life experiences, it's all been very positive. But from all the things I hear from like news and media and people on YouTube and all of that, it's all negative. Yeah. So I feel like I'm often caught in the middle, like, well, I have my real life experiences which have been great. I met really great people, highly talented artists, highly skilled actors and musicians and directors, filmmakers, producers, writers, you name it. And all of it has been very like, yeah, I've met some really cool people. But then when I'm notorious for listening to those like deep dives on YouTube into like celebrity lives. Last night I had to drive all the way out to Elk Grove and back. So I listened to this hour-long deep dive into all of the allegations against Kevin Spacey. All of these things I had no idea even existed until I listened to the video. And I thought, oh, okay, so there's obviously like a dark side to Los Angeles as well. I guess I just haven't lived it, Preferably I'd like to never live it. But from what I've learned being in the music business so long, you stay in any type of scene or any type of industry, eventually you're going to go into those deep, dark pits and be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what people talk about.
I think you're safe since, they got P. Diddy, he's off the...
That's another one that it's like, I keep hearing people say things about it, but I haven't done the deep dive yet into like, okay, what has he actually been accused of? Has he been convicted of anything?
Right.
Is he in jail right now? Is he in prison? Is he free? Is he in court?
I can't keep up, but last I heard he was in jail.
Yeah.
I can't keep up. Maybe LA isn't that bad.
Yeah.
It's just your mindset at the time, I guess.
Yeah. But to be fair, like, it still feels very new for me. So I'm realistic enough to think it might just be like starting a new relationship, right? In the beginning, you're kind of in that bubble where everything is perfect, And it's warm and it's fuzzy and it's feel good. And since I've only been going to and from LA for 4 years now, and if I want to take 5 or 6 months and not be in LA and just be at home, I can do that. Or if I want to go down and do a project for a month, which I've done several times before, then I can go do that. I think because I'm not really in that pool, I don't have as clear of a view of the reality of like living the LA life than most people who have actually been there for several years and they're living that LA life, whatever that means nowadays. I'm skeptical of the people I see on like Facebook and Instagram, and they have that constant highlight reel of like, look how famous and successful and popular I am. Like, I'm skeptical of all those people. Maybe, yeah, they're living a perfect life and they make plenty of money and they're super popular. Maybe that's reality, but the people who boast about it so much and try to put it in your face a little too much on social media, there's that other part of me that's like, what are you hiding, you know? Or what are you trying to prove to others? Or what are you trying to prove to yourself? What's really going on here? What's the other side of the story? I'm curious.
Right. Well, for me, it has not been, you know, I can't even say it's balanced. And it's not too negative and it's not too positive. I think I'm like on the eating shit phase.
Of life, or what do you mean?
Career-wise, life, right before you get to either your success or you quit, that's kind of where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I've been there more times than I would ever like to admit. I haven't figured out like if it ever gets better for good, or if it ever gets worse for good. In my experience, it's just been like extremely deep lows, and then like things get way better, and I'll do a project I'm really proud of, or I'll make a lot more money, I'm a lot more comfortable in life, and then things will just go down, and I'll be miserable and hating everything, and then things go back. Like they come in waves.
Seriously,
so much.
Yeah.
Which is it sounds nice and poetic, but like I often really just want that middle line, you know, where it's not a deep dark pit that I'm trying to navigate blindly through, and it's not this super high where everything is perfect all the time. I kind of just want that. I could give you the first story of the person who gave me my start in the music business. However, I feel it's very cliche because I started out as every musician seems to have this classic story. They sign with the first record label that gives them a deal, they get basically screwed, and used and abused and walk away from all of it with nothing. I have that story, but it seems so cliche. So, instead, I'll tell you a more interesting story. This one, I wouldn't say he fucked me over. It was just like probably the highest opportunity I've had across the past several years, and to this day, I haven't quite figured out like, what was that? What happened, right? I'm not going to say his name, but I will say one of the highest gigs I ever got was with a #1 hit artist. And when we started doing rehearsals, I immediately got the vibe every time I was around him, he just didn't like me. I didn't know why. I was like, well, I'm showing up early, I have all my gear, I know the songs.
Dismissive or like...
Very dismissive, very like, I am above everyone in this room. Which is fine, you know, I can live with that. I've worked with plenty of divas. But the more I rehearse with them, the more I realize, oh, I shouldn't take this personally. It's not just me he dislikes. I think he dislikes everyone in the room. So that's fine. I can work with that. So, all of these rehearsals were very poorly organized. You know, he was dealing with working musicians, so all of us have gigs, all of us have studio recordings, all of us have music videos, all of us have busy schedules where we have to like perfectly plan out everything. And he would like schedule a rehearsal, and then the day of at like noon be like, oh, it's actually at this time. I'm like, what? People still have
like all of a sudden without even communicating.
Right. And,
No,
and this wasn't just me and him. This was a room of like 10 or 11 musicians. So I'm like, if you suddenly change the rehearsal time,
Yeah, that's a problem.
that's everyone else's schedules where suddenly people have to scramble. But I worked with it, and as usual, like I bit my tongue every step of the way. Like any musician, I have just as many opinions as everyone else. But the thing I've learned across over a decade is like I just keep them to myself. No one anywhere needs to know my opinions. It's all good. I just want to do the work, right? So all of these rehearsals were leading up to this really big show he was doing. I won't say where it was. But we started the show, and almost immediately I noticed there's no sound coming out of my monitor. There's no volume here. And I knew it wasn't just me because the bass player was scooting more and more close to me so he could closely hear the rhythm. And I noticed I'm leaning forward more and more because the only sound I have to go off of is like the raw audio of what's happening up front, because basically the rhythm section, the drummer and the bassist, have no sound, right? I don't know what this artist's deal is, or was, to this day. I don't know. But he had a set list, he had us rehearse and prepare. I want to say it was like 15 to 20 songs. We did 6, and then he just cut the show. That was it. And there was one moment on stage where I thought, that's why I'm going to get fired. And to this day, I'm like, that wasn't my fault. I know exactly what happened. I'll tell you what happened. He was a very, very, very controlling person. I noticed that about him on the first day of meeting him, right? There was one song we were doing where I want to say like the lead into the chorus is this very iconic drum fill. However, if you know the song very carefully, there's one part where that iconic drum fill doesn't happen. Instead, you just maintain timing, and he whispers the lyrics going into this next part, right? So I noticed we're doing this song, and when we go into this iconic drum fill part, he whips around and he mimics this part, almost as if I didn't know that was the part. Well, I did that fill along with him, so it kind of worked. The next time it came around, when he's supposed to do this like whispery lyrics part, he whips around and he mimics this fill. And I'm just maintaining time lightly on my hi-hat, and I lock eyes with him, and I kind of just, that's not the part of the song. And I knew in my heart, at that moment, I'm like, it's going to be much easier for him to blame this on me and be like, oh, the drummer fucked up the part. That wasn't me. And it's going to be much easier for him to basically just fire the drummer instead of admit his mistake. And sure enough, we did the one show. You know the worst part? No one knows this. No one knows this part. Because I was so excited to bring my career to this next level, do these rehearsals with this major artist, I never actually talked to any of the people managing him about money. I was so young, I didn't have like rates to do shows. I was just happy to do shows, and if you pay me, that's great. And at the end of all of this, I was like sitting side stage on the stairs, kind of just taking in the evening, like, okay, what was all of that? And I think his manager or whoever it was who handled his money came by, and she pulled a wad of 20s out of her bra and she handed them to me. I said, thanks. I wasn't going to count it right in front of her. I put it in my back pocket. Got in my car that night, drove away.
Are you joking about the whole bra?
No. She pulled it out of her bra. She handed it was like not even in an envelope, not even what I would call professional. Right. But that's not. I say that with no judgment. Again, I was very.
I don't know how I would have reacted if a female gave me money from her bra.
It's better than someone throwing a stack of ones at me like I'm a stripper or something, I guess. But
I don't know.
You know how much I was paid for all of that? all the
$40.
all the rehearsals, this show of like, I want to say 15 or 20 songs that were rehearsed, prepared, ready to go, and he cut the show after 6 songs with no explanation. After all that, $80.
I wasn't wrong.
Oh
man,
like one of the highest what's the word I'm looking for? Opportunities I had during that stage in my life. I've had much higher opportunities since then, but because I was so young, and I was paid $80 to do a show, and sure enough, I didn't get any calls after that show, and I know to this day, I think about this from time to time, and I know from this day it's because he made a mistake on stage, and it was much easier for his ego to just unload it onto me and be like, oh, he messed up.
Was it that noticeable? Is it that bad?
If he had done nothing on stage...
Oh, the artist itself?
Yes,
himself?
it wouldn't have been noticeable because I was playing the right part.
Yeah.
But because he did his whole whip around and mimic this drum fill that wasn't happening, he probably felt stupid.
Oh.
But I knew the song inside and out. I had it down note for note. I had spent weeks... I knew the song. And it was just... it was a mistake that happens on stage. Things like that happen all the time. It was no big deal. But because I knew his personality at that point, the ego, the control, the everyone is below me.
Sounds like he set you up. Almost.
Yeah, but how would that serve him? It just kind of made him look bad in the moment.
True. Good point.
So I wouldn't say that was an experience where like I got fucked over. It was just one of those like, okay, on to the next thing types of things.
Frustration
Yeah.
for me, but that's it. The whole bra thing just...
The what?
The whole bra thing just...
I
$80?
I've never thought twice about that. So what's weird about that?
I don't know. It's just like you said, very unprofessional.
Yeah.
Very unprofessional.
Yeah.
You know?
Usually it's like usually if you get paid for like a high quality gig like this, you would like get a check.
Right.
Or
envelope.
It would at least be in an envelope. This was $80 cash that she pulled out of her bra and it wasn't even like, hey, let's go talk, or hey, let's go outside, or like, hey, let's discuss the gig. I was sitting there side stage and it was like, and I never saw her or talked to her since. So every once, because I know she's still active in the music scene, every once in a while I'm like, what if we just ran into each other at some point? I wonder if she would remember like, oh, he's the guy that I pulled out $80 from my bra and paid him for like probably one of the peak performances in my career during that time.
Yeah.
That's just one story. I could write a book of just like partially, getting fucked over in the music industry. What else is new, you know? But also just like weird stories that to this day, occasionally, if it's someone I know really well, I'll tell them the story and I'll be like, what do you think of this? And often they will look at me like I'm making it up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I can't, if I tell you the details I have of this experience, there's no way you could really believe I'm making it up. Music is just such a strange world that no one really prepared me for, you know? I kind of just walked into it, 18 years old. Actually, I signed my contract with the first record label who offered me a deal 1 month after my 18th birthday. I was still in high school. I had like...
How did you know that you were that good? Like, were you in bands? Like, were you in competitions in high school?
How did I know I was that good? Middle school, I knew I had something because no one else was no one else seemed to really have their thing like I had my thing. Like, everyone in middle school knew I was the drummer. And any opportunity I ever had to showcase that to people, I would get in trouble daily from our middle school band teacher, because I would, at the end of class, everyone is packing up, and I'd sit there doing a drum solo on her old Slingerland drum set until she had to like shut me down and be like, please stop. And then the next day it would just be back to the same thing. And if she would cover up the drum set so I couldn't use it, I would do a solo on the timpanis, or I would do a solo on a concert snare. Like, I was always just so hyper focused on like how, not just playing drums, but I wanted to show people what I could do. In fact, I started performing twice a week, every week, I think when I was like 8 years old. And looking back, I never knew why. And it wasn't until recently, my dad was in town, and he was telling me, going all the way back to when I got my first drum set, he said, you performed at our church because you wanted to show people what you could do. And what's crazy is when I look, I didn't even know how to play drums at 8 years old. I have these vivid memories where it was 2 guitarists, one of them was singing, and I would be in the background playing a beat on the drum set. I didn't even know how to play bass drum yet. So one of the guitarists would have to like turn around during a section of the song and just be like, bass. And then I'd stop the beat and I would like tap the bass along with them. So I don't know when I realized I was good. I thought I was the greatest drummer in the world when I was 17 and 18. And now I look back and I'm like, there's a lot I could have improved on, But now at 30, I wonder if it's the same now. If I have like a lot of confidence in my playing, but maybe at 40, I'll just be like, yeah, there's a lot that I could probably improve on.
So, okay, drums are an instrument, but how do you play it? Like, you just make noise, or is there music notes? Or how does playing drums? Drums is a very complex instrument that from the moment I seen drums is hard, because guitar, there's strings and there's notes, and then, like trumpets or whatever, but drums, that's kind of different, because you're like making sound, but is it like constructive sound, or is it like, I'm just trying to understand the drums.
What I've figured out across 24 years of playing is drums are the only instrument where people have the misconception that you hit the instrument. And if you really know what you're doing, you keep in mind that you never hit a drum, you play a drum, right? So there's no instrument like it. And most people, when they start out, I've learned most drummers starting out, they either hit every note way too hard to the point where they're just like butchering the instrument, or oftentimes they're on the opposite side where they play it so lightly it's like every note whispers across, right? So I've learned over time the importance of having a full range of dynamics. If you're playing a super aggressive song, obviously you want to play each note much harder and much heavier. But if you're playing a song where the drums are way more in the background, you have to have that sense of just like creating very tiny, if not microscopic sounding notes where they're still there, but they're not at the forefront. I could talk for the next 30 days about the ins and outs of playing drums, but it's just very much like the music industry. It's just a weird world, If there's anything I've figured out about it, it's so, playing drums is so infinite, right? As soon as you discover one new thing that's cool, you find all of these different branches that you can basically explore. What if we did it all these different ways, right? And maybe that's just one element of drumming. And then if you break into another element of drumming, you find all those branches where you can explore. So the creativity and the innovation is basically limitless. It's unstoppable, you know. Which is interesting, but also can be can freak people out. I've noticed because there's no ending to any of it.
Kind of like the ocean.
Kind of like the ocean.
The ocean, sky. You know, we want the answers to everything, and there's some things that we'll never know. You know, or maybe down the line. Anyway, what about your scariest moment? Scariest experience, either with the supernatural, or in your career, or in your life?
Oh. Since we're on the subject of music industry, I'll tell you my scariest moment. It's as a musician, but it's also as a person. So, 2021, I got cast in this movie called Parallel Worlds. As this, like, kind of wigged out, stoner conspiracy theorist, has-been drummer, you know? A drummer that, like, made it big for a short time with a band, but now he sleeps on the couch and sleeps in until noon and watches cartoons all day and smokes pot and watches weird internet videos on YouTube, and that's his whole life, right? So, that's not the interesting part. The interesting part was they did not know that I did not live in LA, which was no big deal. I got cast for the part, and I was like, okay, first thing I need to do is get an Airbnb for this stretch of time where we're filming this movie. Simple enough, right? Apparently not. I see this place online, and it's like $46 a night. I'm like, that's good, right? I mean, that's not too much money. And the pictures looked fine. They didn't look like anything red flaggy, because that's totally a term. And I got down to LA, and it was, it wasn't East Hollywood, East Sunset, I think? I've only been there once. One time was enough. I got there, I was looking for this place, and all that I saw was this, like, it looked like an enormous abandoned warehouse that was, like, gated off. Big, black, thick gate around the whole place. All these signs plastered on it that said, no trespassing, private property. There's about 4 or 5 junked out motorhomes on their front lawn. So I called the person I booked the Airbnb with, and I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm in the right place. Did you maybe send me the wrong address? This is what I'm looking at. And he says, oh yeah, you're in the right place. I'll come out. Well, it was a her. She says, yeah, oh yeah, I'll come out and I'll meet you. Just park your car. Park my car in easily the sketchiest, seediest part of any city I had ever seen. And I noticed even with the parking meter, you couldn't park for an extended period of time. You had to, like, re-up your parking payment once every hour. So I'm like, okay, first red flag, what do I do when it's nighttime and I'm sleeping? Do I need to come out here every hour on the hour and pay for parking? And the first thing I noticed about her was she was very adamant about, like, well, you have to pay for parking before you come in. I'm like, yeah, I got that. And she's like, I just want to make sure, or you're going to get a ticket. I'm like, yes, we have covered this information. Let's go inside. We go inside, and the first thing I notice is, like, this little booth they have, I guess you could call it that, where they, like, I'm guessing they do paperwork, or they let people know, here's what you need to know about the place you're staying, anything like that. Shattered window. Big shattered window right in front of it. I'm like, okay, second red flag. People obviously try to break in here. And she says, well, you can't just walk in the door. You need to download this app on your phone. The app will give you this code type of thing that you have to place under the doorknob, and that will scan it. And then you have to punch in this code to get in the front door. I'm thinking, this is an Airbnb, and I have to go through this weird process just to walk in the front door. So she shows me that. I download the app. I get the code. We go in the front door.
There's more.
There's more. Oh, I'm just
Getting started.
Just getting started. So then she says, well, let me show you to your room. I said, okay. And she leads me up and down and across this unbelievable maze of stairs and different floors. And the one thing I'm noticing about every floor, every stair that we're on, is just garbage everywhere. There's garbage all over the place. And she doesn't even seem to be aware of it. And finally, and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to, I just walked in the building, I'm not going to memorize which flights of stairs and different doors to go through and different floors and where to take a left and right. I don't know how to, so finally, we get to my room, and it's a closet. She slides this door open, and there's a cushion on the floor, dirty ass floor, cushion on the floor. And there's one dirty light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Ceiling is covered in tinfoil, and there's one chain coming down to turn on the light.
Are you joking?
No. I can't make this up. And I look at it, and she says, enjoy your stay, and walks away. And so I'm staring at this thinking, because I'm apparently unbelievably naive, thinking, well, I already paid for this place. Should I just stick it out for the entirety of shooting this movie? Which would mean, and call it a room. I got in my car. I think I called my mom. And I was like, okay, here's everything that's going on. I've never experienced any of this before. What do? Should I just stick it out since I already paid for the Airbnb? And she says, get out of that neighborhood now before you get robbed or worse. And I'm like, okay. So I got on the road and I'm thinking, now what? I still have to do this movie. I had to meet with the other musicians and actors that were involved in the movie in like 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. And I didn't know, so I called the one person I knew in LA, which was the director of the first film I was cast in LA, which was Brides of Jesus. Mm-hmm. At that point, we knew each other. I don't know if I would say we were close friends, but we had worked together. And I called him and I was like, I was just in this place and this is what it looked like and I'm not really sure what to do. And he says very nonchalantly, oh, that's a crack house. And I said, yeah. He says, yeah, I used to live in a crack house. That's pretty standard. I'm like, right. Now what? And he says, oh, I know someone. Give me 5 minutes. I'm going to give him a call. And then I'll call you. I said, okay. So I'm driving, just waiting for this call. Turns out the music producer who he and I both worked with on the soundtrack of the Brides of Jesus movie remembered me from a session we had done a year ago because we finished recording that soundtrack. I went home, I bought him this really nice coffee table book that I think was just like classic rock photography, different like behind the scenes images. I had written him a really nice note just being like, I appreciate you taking the time to work with us. I think it's going to be a great film and a great soundtrack. Thanks again. I forgot that I ever sent him that. Mm-hmm. So then he calls me, the music producer calls me, and he's just like, I remember you. You're the coffee table book guy. That was really sweet. And I'm like, yeah. He says, I have a room at my house. Just come by and stay here for however long you're doing the film. I said, really? He says, yeah. So I go to this really nice house, and his wife, who was, she was an actress in all of these like 80s hit films. I can't remember any of them, but she was super sweet. She, oh, come on in. Showed me my really nice room, TV, bed, private bathroom. And she's just like, yeah, we're glad you're here. And that was that. So I went from being in a crack house and considering staying there for the entirety of this shoot to being in this really nice house by a Grammy-nominated music producer within the course of like 2 or 3 hours. And so I dropped off my stuff, and then I had to go meet all the actors and musicians that were involved in this film. They're like, how's your day been? I'm like, Jesus Christ, how much time do you have? And I told them the whole story because I had no filter. And the main actor was just looking at me like, this happened just now? And I was like, yeah, like 2 hours ago. And he's like, and you're here now, like it's all good. And I'm like, yeah, it's all good. It's just a regular day, I guess. And that was that. And then we did the film, finished the film, I went back home, and that was my story of being in a crack house.
Not gonna lie, you have pretty good stories.
Since then, nothing against Airbnb. I know a lot of my friends have had great experiences. I personally have not booked anything on Airbnb. I've just had too many weird experiences before that one, and then that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That I'm like, come on. A crack house is not an Airbnb. Sorry,
Hey, they still need to make money somehow.
Right. Apparently, selling crack isn't enough. You just have to lease out an abandoned warehouse and hope that people don't see that it's an abandoned warehouse. So.
Right. All right. What's next? Where can people find you? What's your next project? If you can talk about it.
So the most recent project has just been taking YouTube a lot more seriously. So I'm doing my best to create a new video every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Just say daily.
But that's not daily.
I know
because I take Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. Because I in the beginning I thought I'm gonna do 5 videos a week, and recording, filming, editing it all together, and then doing like the whole posting schedule. By the time I hit Friday, I'm like, this is gonna kill me before I even get started. So now it's first 4 days of the week, I do a new short video every day. As far as like more high budget stuff, the last movie I finished in LA it has the most unusual title of a movie I have ever heard. It's called My Movie, starring Paul Dano.
That's the name of them.
That's the name of the movie. Which most of the time when I tell people that's the title, they think I'm making it up. I'm like, no. Someone sat down and wrote the movie, and shot the movie, and directed the movie, and that was the title they landed on. So, in that, the funny thing is, quick backstory about my character in that film. I did all of this prep work because it was my first comedy. So I was thinking, I need to be a lot more animated and a lot more like weird and any shock value I can do. And I prepped all this stuff. Every morning I'd listen to the audio recordings of my lines and I'd practice them as I'm making breakfast. And I went down the first day of rehearsal. And the director of this movie, same director as Brides of Jesus, first thing I did in LA, as soon as I did my lines, he says, "You sound too cognitive." I said, "Too cognitive?" He says, "I need you to be brain dead, okay? You're operating on one brain cell. What would that be like?" So immediately I had to change my voice, I had to change my character to basically like this dull, I don't know what's going on, I'm just happy to be here kind of person. And we finished that movie end of May. Now it's in the editing room, so it is up to forces beyond me as far as when it will be released.
Next year,
I believe it will be in theaters eventually. That's as specific as I can make it. Eventually, it will be available.
Nice.
Yeah. So those are the top two. That movie and then YouTube.
What's your name on there?
On all my social media, the handle is Stevenmartin Official. If you want to look specifically for me, if you just type in Stevenmichaelmartin, then I will come up.
You have a famous person name already.
Oh, I needed to be reminded of that, by the way. Actually, I don't, because there's no celebrity named Stevenmichaelmartin. That's the crazy thing, is for years, I have never introduced myself to anyone ever as Steve. And then, sure enough, anyone I meet for the first time, I'm like, my name is Stevenmichaelmartin. And they're like, oh, your name is Steve Martin. I'm like, no, it's not. I just told you a different name, and now you're telling... Yeah, that happened to me just recently. I worked with this new recording studio in Sacramento. Met the owner, super nice guy, helped him out with a session. And he messages me late at night on Facebook Messenger, and he's just like, I just realized your name is Steve Martin. And he sends me a gif of like something from The Jerk. I'm like, do people think I have not heard and seen every possible Steve Martin reference across these past over 20 years? I got it. Also, that's not my name. Usually, once a year, towards the end of the year, I'll make one Facebook post, Instagram post, all these social media posts, where I'm just like, okay, for the last, I doubt it, time, my name is not Steve. I've never introduced myself as Steve. No one calls me Steve. That's not my name. My name's not Steve. I'm not Steve Martin. You gotta stop with the references. And what does that do? That causes all my friends to just be like, so anyway, Steve, have you seen The Jerk? Have you seen every other... Oh, I just can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore.
Alright. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and see you guys on another episode of The Grind.
Does The Grind have social media that I can follow?
Aside from YouTube?
Is it? So I looked for it on YouTube, but I didn't know it was called The Grind, so I just typed in your name and I wrote podcast, and it did not show me anything.
The Grind.
The Grind, is it?
The Grind Podcast.
The Grind Podcast.
Okay. Was that okay?